What's going on, guys? This is Empty Box, and I aim to make you a competent sim racer. This video is largely dedicated to those lovely unwritten rules that are corner rights. It's strange, the concept of corner rights and corner etiquette form the basis of racing cleanly, keeping out of trouble, and assigning blame for wrecks, but there's no hard and fast rules for the most part. Strange, but we'll address the obvious why that is a little bit later on. First off, we have to start with one of the most basic common rules of racing, and that is, it is the faster car's responsibility to overtake cleanly. Now make no mistake, this isn't absolving the slower car of any blame in a potential incident. If you are being passed and you do something stupid that ends up causing a wreck, you're darn right, it's still your fault. This isn't just some line in the iRacing sporting code, rules for a rule's sake, as some may believe, but rather it is stating the obvious that you may not have even thought of. The car coming up from behind looking to pass has a much better grasp of the potential situation than the driver in front. While the driver in the front can only see where the other guy is out of the limited view from the mirrors, which is particularly limited if you're not using virtual mirrors, the driver behind can see the full picture of where their car is, the other car is, and where they are on track. There's also the fact that expecting drivers to be focused on their mirrors constantly while trying to drive as fast as they possibly can is just asinine. Who the hell is looking at their mirror on corner turn-in most corners? That's just not a reasonable expectation, and that is why it is expected for the overtaking driver to exercise a higher level of judgment. It's also why slower cars and mixed class races shouldn't freak out over the faster classes, but that's a different topic altogether. So let's get into corner rights. In road racing, it's actually really pretty simple. If you weren't halfway-ish alongside another car before the turn-in point, the corner isn't yours and you really don't have any business trying to go up the inside. A passing car needs to have established an overlap with their front tires level or ahead of the other car's rear tires by the time the brake zone comes around, by the time you get to turn in. If an overlap isn't established, the driver being passed doesn't really have to respect where the other car is because it's not their corner, whereas if there is an overlap, the car being passed has to respect the other car's positioning. The same also applies at corner exit. If you aren't alongside established on the outside by the apex, then you really should not expect any room at all by the time you get to the exit of the corner, because that door is going to close in your face pretty much 95% of the time. As for oval racing, it has the same thing going on, but it does work a good bit differently thanks to the environment. It's even simpler there. If someone is there a smidge, someone is there a lot, and you best check yourself before you wreck yourself. Pretty simple. The difference is largely a product of the tracks and the corners that you get on an oval track, as well as the abundance of spotters, the lack of rearward visibility out of most oval cars, and the speed and the very tight nature of the racing itself. One thing in oval racing, though, in particular, is multiple grooves. Now, in road racing, this isn't ever really a problem because when it comes to road racing, the racing line is more or less the racing line, and that's just it. But in oval racing, you often have multiple grooves that work at different speeds, different fashions, and all that. Within sim racing, it's going to be generally assumed that if you're on the inside on corner entry, you're going to be taking the low line, you're going to be taking the inside groove. Now, obviously, this is going to depend hugely on which track you're racing on. For example, on some ovals, the low line is right down at the white line at the bottom of the banking, whereas on others, the low line is in the middle of the track. You don't necessarily have to go all the way but to the bottom of the white line, but most tracks will have a somewhat established, line around it, a groove. Of course, regardless of what discipline you're racing in, you could just leave the braking super late and chuck it up the inside. I mean, after all, you would get the overlap, right? That's what a dive bomb is. Leaving the braking super late and trying to establish a claim to the corner, trying to say that you have some right to the corner by getting that overlap perhaps even past the turn-in point for it. Now, these come in various flavors, from the mild, that's just racing and that's just what happens from time to time, to the full-on Stuka variety that is sure to leave a salty aftertaste and likely to result in someone or multiple people getting wrecked. As it turns out, dive bombing is a very good way to piss off other drivers, which means that, don't be surprised if you dive bomb a lot. Other drivers have a habit of just kind of bumping into your car suspiciously often. And stuff like that just kind of happens in racing. Alright, wrapping that all up, it all sounds really officious, very rigid, very standard, very, robotic. Heck, even when I hear corner rights discussed, I still think it's officious sounding, yet here I am making this video, and for a reason. But when you stop and think about it all, it's actually incredibly logical and natural. Just from just how far back can you actually pass a car of a reasonably similar speed? It turns out that you actually have to be pretty close by the time you get to the corner if you're ever going to actually make that pass, so it just makes sense. So why do we need to have these silly unwritten rules? So first of all, they make a greatly fantastic rule of thumb as to whether or not you should be sticking your car in there at that moment. This is going to help you make better decisions by recognizing that, no, the move isn't on at this moment, and I just need to back out, save the car for the next corner, try and make a pass in a different corner, because from here, I'm not in position to do the move. Beyond that, there's the whole not wrecking part, which is kind of important. Expecting the driver being passed to look at the corner while looking at the mirror is a silly expectation. So sticking your nose up the inside at the last minute is asking for trouble. At best, a risky late move puts the leading driver in full control of the situation. Coming out of the other side of the corner is entirely reliant upon them making it work and leaving room for your silly move when they may not even see you. That doesn't sound smart to me. Then there is the fact that if you aren't fulfilling the requirements, so to speak, you more than likely are just slowing down everyone around you with half-hearted, low-percentage pass attempts that are going to end up going nowhere more often than not. Providing the two cars are being driven at a reasonably similar speed, which is obviously very common in a race, you aren't likely to pass someone if you have next to no overlap on the other car at corner entry. And at the same time, it's very easy to end up losing a second or more per lap if no one can follow the proper racing line. So hopefully this has made it clear the importance of corner rights. You're going to make better decisions by following them, at least somewhat rigidly. You're going to crash less often. You're going to be crashed less often. And also, some people say, well, how can I prevent other people from running me over? Well, if more people respected corner rights, you would be run over less often, I will say. So it starts with you, hopefully. And then there's also the fact that if you ain't going to make a pass that's actually going to make a pass, then you're just wasting everybody's time, and that's just not productive at all, and is going to end up probably getting you passed by someone else who isn't wasting their time trying to not make passes that aren't going to make passes. If that makes any sense. You all understand what I'm saying. Just don't do it. If you ain't there, and it ain't yours. There you go. Simple. Now, of course, here we come to the exceptions. We don't race in a vacuum, and we're not oblivious here. All right? There's a reason why these are unwritten rules that make for a great rule of thumb more than anything else. Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do out there. Everyone has made passes that go against the grain. Heck, watch any top pass compilation here on YouTube and you'll see countless examples of drivers going against the grain in some of motorsport's greatest moments. I mean, there's a pass called the pass, which you should probably have heard of, where a guy just launched off the corkscrew. It's pretty freaking awesome. Not exactly the thing you're supposed to do, but really freaking awesome. Sometimes the situation just demands that you do something. Sometimes it doesn't. On lap 1, you really shouldn't go for that low percentage move or try sticking your nose up the inside, which is going to result in both of you going slower. Because honestly, it's going to end up with you either getting wrecked, or alternatively, there's going to be another car coming up really quickly behind you who's going to go, "Hi boys, remember me?" and probably pass both of you because neither one of you could follow the racing line while he could. And that's going to result in that guy bumping up 2 spots, and you're going to have to pass him later on in the race, which, I mean, you might have passed the guy, but you also lost a position, so you went nowhere. Congratulations. But at the flip side, obviously, if it's the last lap, well within reason, and certainly without taking out the other car, you dang right you better send it. That's racing. That's how it goes. That's what you're supposed to do. All right? You just got to have that feel for the situation, and you can't just approach everything as, I always got to pass everybody because it's always the right time to pass people, regardless of whether or not this is actually going to work. Got to pass everything. That's not the right mindset, and that's going to end up with you crashing more often than not, and probably not passing any more cars than you otherwise would. And of course, no one is going to penalize you for sticking your nose in. However, when there is a wreck, it very much will be on you. That's another reason that these rules are unwritten. It's not the violation of the unwritten rules that particularly matters, it's what happens after the unwritten rules are broken that does. In other words, the dive bomb move itself isn't illegal, but smashing other cars off the road is. The dive bomb generally results in smashing other cars off the road, and that's the problem. So that will do it for this video. As usual, if you found it useful, you go ahead and click that thumbs up, that like button. Go ahead and share it with someone who quite clearly doesn't understand the concept of not smashing into things while playing these games. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. Bye.